Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the Railway. Today I'm going to be revealing my top 10 favourite steam liveries of all time. Over the last 200 years or so, there have been some truly amazing steam liveries out there in the world, but very sadly a lot of those have been lost. But more recently, model making companies such as Bachmann and Dapol have been recreating quite a lot of these liveries in immaculate detail on the various models, so that a lot of these liveries can still be enjoyed, if admittedly at a smaller scale. So today I've chosen 10 of my absolute favourites and I'm going to show them to you. So I hope you enjoyed them. Let's get started with number 10. And that is this, which is known as British Railways Blue. So this is a British Railways livery, which means it dates from 1948 onwards, and as far as I know this is not a livery that was used in day-to-day operations, at least not very often. Pretty sure it was known as an experimental livery, and in real life at least, it didn't turn out to be a great success because it was hard to maintain. Obviously it got dirty. I think the blue was quite prone to fading, so it wasn't much of a success in real life. But in model form it is a great success, with tons of different models being produced in this livery, and that is how I've grown to love it. So you've got this very lovely light blue, which is much lighter than a lot of other steam locomotive liveries, and of course it's accented with the lovely white lining and banding which covers the entire model really, the boiler, the running plate, everything like that. And one thing I love about most of the liveries you're going to see today are the areas of black in areas such as the cab roof and the smoke box, because they just contrast beautifully. So there you have it, number 10, BR Blue. Let's move on to number 9. Number 9 was going to be one of the many variations of LNER green. I think it's a beautiful livery used between 1923 and 1948. But instead I've chosen one of the precursors to LNER green, and in this case it is the Great Northern Green, which is very similar to the LNER liveries. Of course you've got the green with the white lining, which looks absolutely wonderful, but on this pre-grouping livery, so pre-1923, you've also got the brown underframe, which is not something that the LNER often did, and I just think that makes this livery look absolutely wonderful. So Great Northern Green. Another thing that I love about this is the high shine handrails. I think that just makes this look so much more grand. And on the tender specifically, the lining is quite a lot more elaborate than on other liveries. The lining, for instance, is quite shapely, and the underframe is very, very detailed in terms of the red lining, isn't it? So definitely one of my absolute favourite liveries, the Great Northern Green, largely because of the deep reddy brown underframe, which I just love. Number 8 then for me has to be Great Western Green, and this livery changed quite a lot over time because of course the Great Western Railway Company was a pre-grouping company and it continued to exist into the grouping period following 1923. Personally I prefer the early Great Western liveries. I tend to find those a bit more ornate. This is a slightly later one on a Hall class, so it's obviously not pre-grouping, but I think this is the best example of the livery here on a Bachmann loco. So this livery is quite similar to the later BR Greens. No doubt this helped to inspire that paint scheme, but I tend to find the Great Western liveries are a little bit more ornate, with extra details such as the copper coloured chimneys and safety valve bonnets and the lining around the splashes, which I think looks lovely. Very complex lining on the tenders, and of course the Great Western fonts and also the various different Great Western logos often look nicer, I think, than the British Railways crests. And the other thing, of course, is just the shade of green on this green Hall class from Bachmann. It's just such a rich colour, isn't it? It looks absolutely fantastic, lovely sheen on it. I was looking at my collection planning this video and I could not stop myself from including this. So Great Western Green, earlier the better, absolutely love it. Let's move on. So number 7 is a little bit unusual. I'm going to call this one Photographic Grey. In this instance we've got the 1361 class, which is Great Western Photographic Grey, I suppose, but it's not limited to the Great Western. Lots of different companies produced locos in this livery, obviously for the purpose of photographing them. So this is another weird one. It's oddball, you know me, I like my strange liveries. Not something that locomotives, I don't think, ever would have carried out in the open, in the world. but nevertheless I think they look fantastic in this livery, and there are plenty of different locos from different companies that carried it. But this particular one is my favourite because it's quite a light shade of grey, which I think looks fantastically unusual. And of course it's got the very lovely white and black lining, which is hard to notice from a distance, but when you look a little bit closer you can see it a bit better. So photographic grey, huge fan of this livery in all of its different shades and different variations. I just think it's super unusual and super elegant looking actually. So there you have it, that is my number 7. So for number 6, I wanted to include something southern region. I love the malachite greens and the olive greens of the Southern Railway, but then I remembered I had this, the LSWR T9, in what is an incredibly unusual, very minty green colour. And this is the only loco I have in this livery. There was some question as to whether this model was actually accurate in this livery, but accurate or not, I absolutely love it. So yeah, LSWR green, incredibly strange colour. It must have been ridiculously hard to maintain this in real life, must have faded a lot, but again, it works well in model form. So you've got the green, again accented with the black of the smoke box and the running plate and such, with lovely copper coloured pipework, which I think contrasts the green very nicely, and with the usual white lining. But in this case, it just gives the loco a completely different look, doesn't it? And of course, you've also got the green wheels with the black centres. Again, fantastically unusual, and it just tops off the livery beautifully. So LSWR green, I doubt any of you saw that one coming, but ever since buying this loco, I have absolutely loved it, largely because of its livery. So here is number 5, which means we are halfway through now, and you might be noticing a bit of a pattern here. I love early pre-grouping liveries, and this is another one. This is a Great Central green locomotive. This is the Bachmann D11, and again this is a pre-1923 livery. And I like this for a similar reason that I like the Great Northern green really, but except I like this even more because it's even more decorative, it's got even more different colours used, and I think the green is an even nicer shade. So again, you've got a lovely shade of rich green with white lining on the boiler. The underframe has a splash of that deep browny red, which I think looks wonderful, except in this case it's sort of lined with an orangey red as well, which I think looks fantastic. The wheels are very ornamental as well, with the white lining around them. Again, this has got the high shine handrails and different detailing, which is absolutely excellent if you ask me. And again, I think the best part of this is the tender, very ornate lining and a very large quantity of lining as well. But you'll notice that the underframe is a slightly lighter colour, I think, than the Great Northern, which just makes the whole loco stand out even more. So Great Central green, absolutely fantastic, easily one of my favourite liveries, and in fact, you might be wondering how I can better this. Well, stay tuned because I think I can. So here is number 4. It's another early livery, quite similar to the BR Blue, of course, but ultimately I think this is better than the BR Blue. So it's the Caledonian Royal Blue, which is another very early pre-grouping livery, and the blue of this livery is a much lighter blue, and I think that this just totally transforms the locomotive so that it looks nothing like BR Blue. Like the BR Blue, it does have the white and black lining, quite a lot of it as well, as you can see. But you've got this very sort of pinky reddy colour of the underframe, which is very unusual. But with the white lining on it, particularly on the tender, I just think it looks exquisite, absolutely wonderful. Again, in real life, I'm not sure how practical this livery would be. Unlike the British Railways blue, I think the Caledonian Railway did actually use this livery usually on their passenger locos, so I can only imagine that it must have been a lot of work to maintain this. But I'm glad they did because it's fantastic, and of course this too has the high shine chrome plated handrails and details which just finish this off beautifully. So there you have it, the Caledonian Royal Blue, one of the most beautiful liveries of all time. For now though, let's move on and I will show you the next one. So now we are heading into the top 3 liveries with this, which is known as Stroudley's Improved Engine Green. Another pre-grouping livery, and it's another extremely unusual livery, which is why I've chosen it. First of all, because quite clearly this is not green, it's more of a yellow ochre type thing, orange if you like. Stroudley apparently was a bit colourblind, or in my opinion, slightly mad, that's my theory, which is why this got called green. But What a fantastic livery. I've chosen this one. This is the Dapol Box Hill Terrier because actually it's the best example of this livery I have in model form. The lining is extremely complex, one of the most complex examples we've seen today. It's got white, black, red and green in the banding there, which is excellent. The running plate and the coupling rods and quite a few other details are painted into the red, which is absolutely gorgeous. You've got the white cab, which really makes this look special and quite royal, doesn't it? You've got the copper, so that's another box checked there with the top of the chimney. And several different variations of the lining, as you can see on the buffers and the running plate, and also the side tanks, which have a slightly different lining scheme to them as well. So on a small loco, particularly like this, it's amazing how complex this livery is. Very, very ornamental, very decorative, and I absolutely love it. Okay, let's move on. Number 2. And number 2 is yet another LBSC livery. So we've got 2 on the trot from the same company. And this is known as the LBSC Umber, or Poo Brown, if you want to go that far. And yes, I think brown is a horrible colour. I think most things look terrible in brown. But for some reason, this locomotive just looks amazing. It's one of my absolute favourites. I don't know whether it's just because this shape of this model happens to look good with brown. Perhaps it's the particular shade of brown that Bachmann have managed to get with this. But yeah, this just does something for me. It looks absolutely wonderful. So this is another pre-grouping livery, pre-1923, and here we've got it on the H1 Atlantic. Of course though, this livery comprises of more than just Poo Brown. You've got the golden lining across the boiler, and it's very generous, isn't it, the lining on this example. You've got the gold and black lining on the splashers, which I think looks, in fact, if anything, quite modern. Yeah, it's quite ahead of its time really, isn't it? Plus you've got the high shine chrome parts again. That's a theme really, isn't it, among my favourites. That's obviously something I like. Handrails, coupling rods, valve gear, even the cylinders and buffers to an extent. Absolutely fantastic. You have still got the black accented areas such as the smoke box, but in this case there's lots of silver lining on there, so even that looks decorative. And yet again you've got the white cab top, which I also absolutely love. And the tender is unusual as well because you've got this, again, what would normally be considered a hideous orange on the interior there, but again, for some reason, I just love the way this looks. It's going to be an acquired taste, this one, and I can see quite a few people being confused and not agreeing with my choice of this. But I'm standing by it. The LBSC Umber, one of my absolute favourite liveries of all time. But it is not my favourite. My favourite is coming up next. So here is what I think really is my favourite livery of all time. It is another pre-grouping livery because, let's face it, they are the best, aren't they? This is known as the SECR Green, lined green. And quite a few companies have produced this, but I think Dapol's version is the best. I think the quality of the Hornby and the Hatton's attempts at this livery were slightly better, but of course they didn't fully include the electroplated dome and safety valve bonnet, which Dapol did, and I think it looks wonderful. So you've got this, what would we say, evergreen green, I guess, for the bulk of the body, which again has this very unusual lining on it consisting of red, sort of grass green I would say, and yellow, with the occasional splash of copper around the smoke box and also the splashers. And just look at the complexity of the lining on these splashers, follows them very, very nicely. I think the SECR green wheels are some of my favourite wheels of any livery. Just look at the complexity there. Red lining, green spokes with red lining on the actual spokes themselves. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? Bright red valve gear underneath the boiler, absolutely fantastic. Black cab this time, but we do have the silver painted handrails again. Lined buffers, again we've got this sort of red underframe. I think you can see it best on the tender, but the axle boxes are picked out in the green and those are lined as well. There's red and yellow lining on the underframe of the tender, red on the suspension springs and yellow on the rest of the underframe. It really is an unbelievably complex livery. Everywhere you look there is some sort of decorative lining or other paintwork. It's just absolutely incredible, isn't it? Easily my favourite of the different steam liveries. Up until now, I personally haven't seen anything better than this. If you have though, please do let me know. So there you have it, my top 10 steam liveries, and aren't they amazing seeing them all together like that? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you've got a favourite livery that I did not include in this video, comment it down below, and even if I did, you can still comment if you'd like to. For now though, that is all I've got time for, so thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon.